Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about From Season 2, Episode 6, Deux. The episode's description reads as follows. Tensions run high at Colony House when word of the coming food shortage leaks out. A night at the clinic takes a terrifying turn. The episode was directed by Jack Bender. The episode was written by John Griffin and Jeff Pinker. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you are on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow, and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corman Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you are already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to my channel. First off, Stacie's going to give us a sad shout-out this week. She has the notes for that, so...
Oh, did you peek at my notes?
I did. I did happen to see that. So I figured we'd start off with the sad one.
Yeah, so there are currently wildfires spreading throughout Halifax, Nova Scotia, which happens to be right in the vicinity of where the From set is. So we just wanted to give our thoughts and prayers to all of the residents of Halifax and best wishes to everyone who's affected by the fires. Tons and tons of people have had to evacuate their homes over the last 2 or 3 days. So hopefully they get that under control soon and there's little damage as possible.
Yes, that would certainly be nice.
Yeah, and hopefully the fires didn't make it to the From set.
Yes.
That would put a damper on season 3.
I mean, they could always explain that. There was apocalypse happening in
between seasons?
Yeah, probably. Who knows? Actually, I think there might even be an apocalypse during the course of this season, but we shall see.
Well, currently the set, people have posted lots of photos of the set right now as it stands between filming, and they've got like all the windows boarded up on Colony House.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that means all the windows are going to get blown out, or that was just to prevent, vandalism of someone breaking the windows.
I think it might be probably to prevent any monsters from getting in there. We have also a shout out for Latrice, who thinks that the ghastly children and the boy in white are connected. She also thinks that if you positively interact with the ghastly children, they'll become more coherent and not like the adult monsters. So I'm guessing she feels that the ghastly children are just, when they're saying angui or whatever it is they were saying, just saying something unpronounceable and, basically saying something, a word that is incoherent because they don't really know how to express it.
Yeah, but they were all saying the exact same word.
Yeah, I tend to think that what they were saying actually has meaning of some type. That
it has some meaning, but I don't know if it necessarily has real-world meaning.
Right. And as far as the connection between the boy in white and the ghastly children, I think that the monsters, the ghastly children, and the boy in white are all separate entities. That they're not really connected.
I don't know. I feel like there has to be some link between the boy in white and these children, since they're also wearing white.
Yeah, fair.
I feel like there's some correlation, but I don't think they're the same at all.
No. I think they're different, species of monster, if that makes any sense. I think, something horrible happened to the ghastly children, like some terrible accident.
I feel like they're more tangible, even though they're appearing to her in more of a vision, it seems like. I feel like the one that we met locked up was very much there.
Right.
So I feel like there is some tangible presence to them, even if she's not finding them in that context necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the boy in white he's more like an actual ghost child, it seems like.
Have we even seen the ghost in white? The boy in white this season? I can't even recall. The only thing I can recall is him being in the recap of season 1 when we started season 2.
Right. Yeah, we definitely saw him at the end of season 1. We've referenced him a whole lot. I don't know if we've seen him. Maybe not.
And by the way, Latrice's theory that if you basically socialize the children, they'll become less aggressive and more less like the monsters, that perfectly describes parenthood. They start off as these incoherent, evil creatures, and you basically hopefully raise them to not be such monsters when they grow up.
Well, I don't know if I'd say that they're aggressive to begin with.
Yeah,
I think they're just trying to get her attention. I think they want her help.
Yeah, that's the impression that I generally get. We have a shout out for Lunatic Baby 23. First of all, that's a great screen name. I love it. She or he, I don't actually know which, they, agrees with most of our points from last week, except for our thoughts on Sarah. This person believes that it's basically weakness of the mind that leads her to become a villain, And while I feel there's some truth to that, and I think maybe her mental weakness is perhaps the reason she was targeted for this, I still believe that she deserves empathy for what she's gone through and what she was forced to do. Because it clearly weighs on her mind. She clearly has a conscience. So, agree to disagree here. But, yeah, I think even if this person is right, Sarah still deserves empathy.
Yeah, Sarah's a complicated situation. It's definitely not black and white.
Right.
She's a villain.
And I think I think a lot of people think in black and white terms.
Right.
They don't see the grays in things.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's, if you put the townspeople together, all of them, you would have people that think like us, and then you would have people that think more like Lunatic Baby 23.
And, I come from a place where I think their whole punishment system is ridiculous to begin with. Like, I totally don't think Frank should have been murdered.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, Boyd wasn't even going to do it.
He wasn't going to do it. He
gave
him an out. But I think the whole law was just silly. Like, punish people for causing death by causing more deaths. Doesn't... I mean, I get the reasoning behind it to just scare people into, being more responsible, but he lost his family. I think that was punishment enough.
Yeah, I agree. I also have one more shout out for Renee Bird, who was on Facebook pointing out that the actor who plays Dale is married to Elizabeth Saunders, who plays Donna. I don't know if we've ever brought that up before.
I don't think we brought it up, but I knew that.
I might have known that at one point.
I had some fun chats with both of them on Twitter this week during the live tweeting.
Okay.
Yeah, it was they're really great. They are both like having whole conversations with each other on Twitter, probably from right next to each other.
And we're definitely going to have something to say about Dale this week, for sure.
Yeah, so Elizabeth Saunders had a lot of fun things to say.
I'm sure. Maybe you can bring some of that back up when we get to those points.
And if you're not, like, on Twitter, like, you need to be on Twitter. Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, when the show has its actual live stream on MgM, the cast all comes and does live tweeting, and they are so great. I got so many interactions with them this week, between likes and replies, and even a couple of retweets.
I saw some of those.
So they're really great. This is an amazing cast.
And by the way, the title, the meaning behind it, Pas Deux, which is, by the way, a pronunciation that I looked up on YouTube to get it right. It's a ballet, a dance duet in which two dancers perform ballet steps together, usually as a man and a woman.
I think that the direct translation is a dance for two.
Ah, gotcha.
But it is a specific dance, usually, that it's referring to, which is in Nutcracker and...
yes, I did see Nutcracker.
Pop up. Swan Lake, and the whole, what is it, the Black Swan thing?
Something like that, yeah.
So, yeah, there's definitely some symbolism there. I don't know if I necessarily follow any of that.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question later. Like, we get the ballet and ballerina, imagery, and I'm wondering if there's something more to that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm sure there's something to it, but it escapes me for the most part.
Right, like ballet, I don't have much appreciation for. I'll just admit that. I'm uncultured swine, but it's the music and the dance is often very beautiful and haunting, and that's why a lot of times it shows up in horror because it's very haunting and creepy. But I'm wondering if it goes beyond just trying to be creepy and, having that imagery to be kind of freaky and scary. But you, at this current time, don't really know.
Well...
Or have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I was going to talk about it when we talked about the ballerina. But
yeah,
I
then we kind of
might as well just say what I have to say now, because I don't have much to say about it. I noticed that the ballerina is wearing all white.
Mm-hmm.
So we can kind of lump her in that category, like the boy in white. Are they good or are they evil?
Right.
And we get the impression, when she starts being all like monstery, that maybe she's evil.
Mm.
But I saw a lot of people speculating, no, maybe she's trying to warn you about the monsters or trying to tell you how to defeat them.
Right.
That she's trying to be helpful, but it comes across creepy.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like maybe it goes back to, those type of comparisons. We've got the good versus evil, the yin and the yang, these opposing forces. We have night and day, which is constantly recurring both, literally in our story, but also very representative in all of the pictures and different symbolism that we're seeing throughout the series. Even the talisman, it has a rising sun on one side and a setting sun on the other side. So the whole, two opposing forces is really, I think, our overall kind of symbolism. So you think about something like, the Black Swan, and you've got, there's usually one dancer wearing black and one wearing white, and one's good and one's evil. And not to get too losty, but I mean, that's an underlying theme of Lost as well, is we end up finding out that, the island has two forces. One represented by a character that wears white and one represented by a character that wears black, and they're kind of depicted as good versus evil.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we're kind of looking at here. But the two dancers would be Boyd and the ballerina, and if she's good because she's the one wearing white, does that mean that Boyd is evil? Or because the force inside him right now is evil with the worms? Or is she the evil force? I don't know. It's definitely lost on me, the whole...
I see what you did there.
The whole, what exactly we're supposed to be getting out of the ballet, I don't know.
All right, so do you have any other theories or the things we're going to get to before we talk about the episode?
I have one thing to talk about that's outside of this episode, and it involves the opening, which, everybody's analyzed the opening like crazy because it hasn't changed. But there's one thing from it that I kind of picked up on this week that I hadn't really thought about before.
Theme?
Right, during that, the images that we see during that. So one of the scenes, there's a shot, we've got Ethan's crutch in view, and then also there's a decorative plate depicting Hummel's stormy weather, which is the image of two little kids, a boy and a girl. They're under an umbrella, and he's holding a walking stick.
Okay.
Now, I've seen people talking about this image a lot, specifically talking about how we have both the crutch here and the walking stick, and they've talked about, the evolution with Ethan losing his crutch and gaining the walking stick that Victor gave him, and talking about, his healing and all of that. And when I was looking at this image this week, I noticed also in that same shot, there's a teacup sitting there.
Okay.
On the table, right kind of between where the crutch is and where the plate is. And I got to thinking about the tea. Now, everybody, not everybody, but...
We bring up the tea a lot.
So many people think that the tea is something evil and the tea's poison. And, we kind of laugh at that, and we don't think that here. We think the tea is just the tea. But I got thinking, what if it's trying to tell us here that the tea is actually what is helping heal people?
Oh, okay.
So we've got the image of the crutch and the image of the walking stick, which was right around when we were told. Actually, I think it was the scene directly before that where we were told by Tabitha to Ethan, "Wow, you're healing really quickly." It's surprising.
I do remember that. Yep.
And we've seen that. We've seen where Ellis, got his sling off of his arm in a day.
Right.
And everybody seems to be healing quickly. And maybe it's the tea.
Maybe.
And maybe I don't even mean Mrs. Lou's doing something magical. I mean maybe whatever herbs they're picking to make this tea out of, maybe have some super extra human restorative powers.
I mean, anything's possible in this town.
Beyond what we have in our real world. So yeah, I was just thinking of that, how I hadn't noticed there was actually a teacup right in that same scene between those two other images.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. All right, so your overall thoughts about this week's episode.
I love the episode. I thought it was great. I love where we're going. There was lots of suspense, lots of kind of, thrilly stuff going on. I think they overhyped it, though.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. And I thought that was a possibility.
Because they've been saying since the beginning, this is the episode, and all the people that are like, oh, it's dragging, but here comes episode 6. They were expecting serious horror based on how it was hyped. And I think they did themselves an injustice by overhyping this episode. I think if we didn't go into it as a fandom with that expectation, I think it would have gotten a lot higher raves from people. Now, I still love the episode. I'm not complaining about the episode, but I think a lot of people are disappointed in the episode because they had too high of expectations going in for what they thought they were going to see, like action-wise and horror-wise.
See, I kind of modulated my expectations, as I said I would last week. I didn't buy into the hype. I just came into it as an episode. I've enjoyed every episode this season, even the last one, which for me is probably one of the weaker episodes of the season, but still pretty good in its own right. So I didn't come in thinking, oh, this is going to blow my mind or anything like that.
Right.
So I kind of knew going in that it was going to be overhyped and not to buy into it.
I was surprised. We didn't get any character deaths.
Yeah, that part I was really
thought
surprised.
We were going to.
Yes.
Whether it was a main character or side character, we didn't get any human deaths in this episode.
At one point, I thought it was pretty clear who was going to be that death, but
there was a couple that could have been pretty close to death here.
I thought it was a great episode. This was a really great episode for Kenny.
Kenny was very strong in this episode. He is definitely improving his leadership skills at every turn.
It's funny because I thought that the revelation in episode 3 that Boyd knew about Sarah and that Sarah killed, well, not directly, but was responsible for his father's death, was going to, plummet him, like mental health wise. He was just going to go in the toilet. On the contrary, it seems like it strengthened him.
Yeah.
Like, I think he has a really good showing in this episode. Yeah, like, just compare this to his performance in episode 2, and his leadership is leaps and bounds better than it was even there. And which was not that long ago. So
right, like a day and a half?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so this episode begins with Boyd and Mrs. Wu making his case for keeping Sarah alive.
Yeah, picking right up where we left off last week, where we ended with him saying he needed to talk to her.
Mrs. Wu, during the course of this monologue, doesn't end up saying a word. She just kind of looks at Boyd.
Yeah, and you can tell by the look on her face, she's clearly not happy with him, but I think she has enough respect for him that she's just going to sit there quietly and let him say what he needs to say.
And it's not even really clear by the end if she is won over by what he says.
I don't think she is. And I was also questioning, like, how much of this is she actually understanding?
Right.
We know Mrs. Liu, English is not her first language, and Kenny communicates with her in Cantonese. And we know she knows a little bit. Like, she's able to hold a general conversation, but Boyd is just going on and on and on with details.
Right.
And I wonder how much of it she's actually picking up. Other than, the basic concept, which is he's sorry and...
I'm sorry. Kenny comes in to interrupt this conversation, which I knew was going to happen.
Yeah.
He is definitely not pleased to see him. He's like, well, what are you doing here?
Yeah, he's really pissed off that Boyd's talking to his mom, but... I also think he realizes he can't just ban Boyd from the diner like he did Sarah.
Right. Mrs. Wu tries to calm Kenny down, but Boyd says it's okay. He thanks her for his time and then takes off, supposedly.
Yep.
He goes to the church. It's empty. Sans the music box. We hear the music that we heard in the season episode 2. It wasn't the premiere. I don't think we heard that yet. And we have the ballerina dancing around.
Yeah. When I first saw this, he walks in and the church is empty. All the seats are gone. All the seats they put in there to turn this building into a church. The mailbox that they're using as a podium is gone. My first thought was that he went to some sort of a time slip again, because I still think that maybe there was some sort of time slip involved in his interaction with Martin.
Well, this actually sort of plays into what I was thinking about all those scenes in episode 2, in that I don't think that what we saw there literally was what happened. And I think that we see a full-on hallucination of him leaving the diner and coming to this place. Well, it kind of plays into that a little bit.
But yeah, I was thinking, is this what this building looked like before this group of people took it over and turned it into... Because it wasn't a church originally. If it was a church, it would have pews in it.
Right.
We know this is a very old building, the oldest building in town. Because all the other buildings look like they're, mid-century builds. This one looks pretty ancient. And I got to imagine this building has been there since before this town was this town. Whatever this land used to be in the 1800s, the 1700s, or maybe even the 1600s. This building's that old. And, what was this building? I'm very curious. Like, it was some sort of a meeting house. I don't know, where there's some satanic rituals happening here.
I mean, we know that the clinic was actually a school.
Right. But again, that's a more modern building. This you can tell it's just a stone building. It definitely looks older. But yeah, I was like, oh, are we seeing this? This is what it looked like before these people took over.
Right. Possibly.
I mean, it still could be that the visions he's seeing, but this and wherever, he was with Martin, even if he's not physically in a different time, he could still be having visions of what these places were like in a different time.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So the ballerina dances around, and eventually she has worms coming out of her mouth.
So he's very confused, right? As he should be. Like, first of all, like, what's going on? What happened to the church?
Right.
Who is this woman dressed in this, like, pristine white starched tutu?
You know what I was thinking? That she looked an awful lot like the nurse monster that we saw last episode.
Okay.
She kind of has similar...
I'd have to look at a side-by-side to see. I saw people saying, oh, she looks like... People thought she was Kelly. I was like, no, she doesn't look anything like Kelly.
No. I vividly remember Kelly. Kelly, I know you have a giant hole in your head and that you're dead, but still give me a call.
So yeah, she invited Boyd to dance with her, and that's where, that they were doing the dance of the title of this episode. And then, like you said, she turned all monstery, and like the worm started coming out of her mouth, which is kind of what we see when the monsters transform. Although she didn't have she didn't have like the 3 rows of razor teeth that they have, so it was somewhere kind of between what the monsters do and just all out wormy.
Right.
So yeah, I called her like wormy monster. And of course he's startled by this. He screams and falls, and he's still in the diner.
Right. He wakes back up. Kenny comes to his aid, and I should point out that, Kenny, as mad as he is at Boyd, still comes to his aid when he falls. And he demonstrates a care for Boyd throughout this episode.
Yeah, so Kenny and Mrs. Lou both kind of help him out. He fell, he has a cut on his head, there's blood. That's something worth noting, because if they had any open wounds on their hands, they could have been infected with his blood at this point, too. Did he have a seizure? Adam thought he had a seizure during this time.
I don't recall him having a seizure.
Like, he fell to the ground, and Adam thought he had a seizure, and maybe this is kind of similar to what Sarah sees during her episodes.
Yeah, no, I don't recall him having a seizure during this scene. I think he just fell, and then Kenny and Mrs. Lou came to his aid and helped him up.
Yeah, so Mrs. Lou tells Kenny, take him to see Christy. And he kind of resisted, but then, once he stood up and realized he was kind of woozy, he was like, okay. And Kenny, like you said, is here to help him. Regardless of where they are at personally, Kenny's not going to, just abandon him and starts walking with him.
And credits.
Yeah, so that was
Sarah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Before opening credits.
Yep.
Like, a lot of things happened here.
When we come back, Donna, Ellis, and Fatima, along with Dale, are gathering food from Colony House. And Dale is pretty much, I hope he brings some of this back. And I think he already knows.
Dale knows. He's paying attention. And I noticed that they're kind of talking about this and how they want to keep it quiet from the residents right in front of Dale.
Right.
He's the last person that should be let in on any secrets.
He's a liability for sure.
So yeah, they're loading all of the fruits and vegetables that they have, all of the crops that are left, into the truck. And Donna says she's going to spend the night at the Lou house working on the rationing system and taking care of the food. And she tells Fatima and Ellis, their job is to secure the house for the night. We can see they're taking extra security measures after, the Colony House invasion. This is only, their 3rd or 4th night that anybody has slept in Colony House since then. So we get to see here a little bit of, like, all the extra things that they're doing. She says, make sure you put cans on all the windows. This really shows us that of all the people that live in this house, she sees them as, like, the second in command. Fatima and Ellis as a team are the people that she trusts and puts them in charge of the house for the night.
And on the one hand, I'm totally down with that. I agree. On the other hand, the way they acted, I don't think they really helped the situation in a way that Donna would have if she were there that night. But we'll get to that.
But it just shows you, like, out of all these people, these are the ones she trusts the most. These are the ones who she thinks can handle things.
And we should point out that in this scene, Fatima and Ellis are already acting pretty weird with each other.
Yeah, there's definitely some tension between them throughout the episode. And Yeah, it starts right here. And, of course, we do the thing where we're going to flip back and forth between all of these stories for a bit. But, yeah, Donna drives off with the food, and we're left with Dale on the porch looking, really suspicious about what's going on. And he's already in a bad mood. And maybe he should have just went with Donna.
I think that would have, helped a lot. But, yeah. All right, so we have Christy at the clinic, and she's looking for a hair tie. She looks into Mary's bag.
She's looking in the mirror at her terrible, terrible haircut.
Yes, a lot of people are not a fan.
I'm not a fan, and this is the haircut that the actress is currently sporting, and I think she looked a whole lot better last season.
Well, you should let her. You should let her know that, so that
I'm sure she's heard it. I'm sure she's heard it.
Sure. So she happens to discover a booklet in Mary's bag about rehab, and I am surprised at how quickly this blew up in Mary's face.
Yeah.
Given the pacing of the early season, for this to just be dropped in the very next episode, right after it happened, for it to blow up in her face like this is really surprising.
Yeah. So the packet is from Lavender Palm Rehabilitation and Treatment Center. And their logo, not their logo, their slogan that's on the bottom of the packet says, "Let us help you take your first step to the road of recovery."
Ooh.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Got me thinking about, the road that leads you here and the tree. And
you maybe think that this was not a rehab place at all, but a lure to get her here.
It's possible. You come at these things suspicious of everything, right? Is this really just a rehab center she was going to, or is there a possibility that they are somehow involved in some conspiracy sending people to this place? Maybe this is her therapy.
This could be a very extreme version of rehab for sure. So,
do you have you ever heard of what show? I'm going to ask you if you've heard of a show, but I'm struggling with the name of it. The Wilds.
The Wilds. I have heard of The Wilds. I never actually watched it.
Yeah, so it's a group of girls that they're on an airplane. They're on their way to some sort of retreat that's supposed to be about female empowerment and bonding. And it turns out that, the company, spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear, skip forward. The company that, runs this retreat, that's why I'm thinking about comparing this to this company. The whole thing's a big experiment. And the girls get in a plane crash and end up on this island, but they didn't really. It was all staged by the company.
Ah, I see. Is this a documentary or an actual show?
No. This is a show.
Okay, so
it was just comparable that the company is involved in some big conspiracy to send people somewhere weird and see how they respond to it.
Interesting. So Christy realizes that Mary lied to her. That she wasn't going to the place that she said she was going to.
She said she was going to her aunt's. That's why she was on the bus. I think she's more upset about the fact that Mary lied to her than the fact that Mary's using again. So we do hear in this that there is a history here of drug abuse. And Christy thought that, Mary was doing so well, and she apparently was clean before Christy disappeared. But yeah, I don't think she's upset about the drugs. She's upset that she was lied to. And I totally get that.
Yeah.
That's always my thing. I don't care about what the problem is. I care about the fact that you're lying about it. That's the worst thing you can do, is lie to your partner.
And Christy has a guilt reflex as she wonders, okay, did you start using again after I disappeared? And Mary ends up saying, yes, but there were also other factors as well.
But, obviously, her fiance vanished.
Right. That's not going to do very well for anybody's mental health, never mind somebody who's an addict.
Right.
Christy realizes during the argument that she needs to be worried about the medications.
She remembers that, that Mary had access to the medicine cabinet.
And she goes straight for the cabinet, tries to start moving things around.
Yeah, so she is doing inventory now.
Right. Mary is basically stop it, you don't need to do this.
Right.
And then Christy straight up asks, did you take anything from here? We need these for the town. This is all that we got. And eventually Mary ends up confessing to the fact that she took some of the morphine.
Yeah, she actually admits to that a lot quicker than I thought she would have.
From Tilly, who does not appear in this episode.
Tilly does not appear in this episode. There's a lot of people don't appear in this episode.
Yes, and Jade and Victor are also absent.
A lot of viewers didn't understand. They're like, oh, where's Sarah? She disappeared. No, she wasn't in the frickin' episode.
Okay, so there was one particular poster who I think you know. You said he drives you crazy. I'm not going to mention him by name, but he's been saying in recent weeks that he thinks Sarah's a monster, and he pinpointed the moment in episode 5, I think it was, the last episode, where Sarah walks by Ethan, and that smile that he gives Ethan, and then like it didn't seem real. So he took that moment to as evidence that she's a monster. I think that's a completely misreading of that scene.
Yeah.
But then he also said that her absence was evidence of her being a monster in this episode because she wasn't at the church. But the whole church scene was a hallucination, and we weren't actually there. So Sarah could still very well be there. And I think that person, you replied to his comment, and he replied back something along the lines of, "Oh, but she's only been in 2 episodes, right? Because she only appeared again in episode 3." Or actually episode 4, I think. And then
4 and 5, yeah.
4 and 5, and just missing in this episode. But her presence is kind of accounted for, and sort of. Because
we're only following really.
We didn't know where she was.
We're only looking at 3 locations in this episode,
right? And
then 2 of those locations, the characters merge, and by the end of the episode, we're looking at 2 locations,
right,
out of a dozen that we have. So yeah, we're not seeing everything.
Yeah.
And I know which poster you're talking about. That's not the same one that I was saying I was annoyed with.
Oh, okay.
So we'll leave it at that.
All right. Okay. So. Oh yeah. Okay. So they get into an argument.
Yeah. So
Mary starts acting really angry.
Yeah, and Mary wants to leave, and she wants to go take a walk to cool off, and Christy tells her, "You can't leave, it's too close to dark." So they're stuck here together in this, moment of we need to be apart and cool down, and there's nowhere for them to go.
Awkward.
I mean, they are in a big building, though.
Right.
At least there's that. They're not stuck in a little house together. They're in this kind of giant school.
So they can just go to separate rooms.
Yeah.
But, the way that Mary is quick to get angry is very typical of an addict.
Yeah.
So that's... And
you know what? I'm not getting good feelings about Mary and Christy.
I mean, you haven't since the beginning, to be fair. But this definitely does not help. All right, so we see Boyd and Kenny walking to the clinic.
They're walking towards the clinic. They pass these ruins of an old building that's right next to the root cellar. Now, I never noticed this before.
Yeah,
I was wondering, is this something that they've shown before and I just didn't see it next to the cellar, or have we literally never seen this before?
I was kind of curious about that myself because I didn't recognize those structures.
Okay, so that's something to look for during rewatch number 516. If anybody knows, has this structure been seen in other episodes before?
And I think
we've seen the root cellar a lot of times.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing those rocks or.
Yeah, it's like the foundation of a burnt out, fallen down house, which I'm thinking looks like it dates to the same type of period as the church building. It's the same type of structure. And this, I've said it before, I've gotten a lot of Skyrim type feelings from the visuals in this series.
Yeah.
That burned out building reminded me so much of some abandoned buildings in Skyrim. And that makes me think it's haunted by someone who died there, maybe in a fire.
Maybe it was the ghastly children, because I think something really bad happened to them.
Maybe.
So Boyd starts to try and talk to him about Sarah, and Kenny, noting that Boyd is starting to walk better, wants nothing to do with this conversation and starts to walk away.
Before that, something else important happened. They've noticed that the leaves are changing colors.
Oh, yes, okay.
In this scene, we see Kenny noticing it for the first time, and Boyd's like, "Yeah, I noticed that too." And we know last week Victor noticed it.
Victor specifically, yeah.
And we were questioning last week, or I know I was, what does Victor mean the trees are changing? Is he talking about the seasons? And we get confirmation here, yeah, that's what's happening. The leaves are falling. And we also got confirmation that the seasons do not change here. Now, that question's been flown around a lot, and it's kind of been left on well, we don't know for sure that the seasons don't change because we've only lived here for 2 weeks.
Right.
And they haven't really said specifically one way or the other. Now they have. They've told us. Boyd said that's never happened before. He's been here for 2 years.
Right.
And he's never seen the leaves change. And it's got me questioning a lot. Okay, it's fall coming. Now, in real world time, we're in March 2022 right now.
Yeah.
We've confirmed that the timeline runs linearly. The time that's passing for these characters is equivalent to the time passing in the real world. Several instances of that. Most recently, Mary coming and saying, you've been gone for 6 months, and Christy tells us she's been gone for 6 months. There's lots of other examples of that where we can see time is moving in a linear fashion for the people. But now we've got confirmation that the town itself hasn't been changing, and it's not running linearly, because if it's March in the real world, there would not be leaves falling.
Right.
It's not fall. So wherever they are very far from the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Either in some other planet or other dimension, but there's no reason to think that this is going to follow the patterns of our seasons.
Yeah, I don't think that this is an actual place on planet Earth. Like, it maybe it's like some kind of like pocket universe somewhere.
Yeah, it's somewhere very not here.
I don't think it's like. I mean, I don't know. It could be on another planet, but I'm thinking that this is just.
It's a completely artificial environment.
Yeah, it's not part of our normal world.
So they're thinking, fall's coming. Well, maybe, but if that's the case, and this last season lasted for years and years and years, at least 2, because Boyd's never seen it, maybe all 40 years since Victor's been there, that could lead to a really, really long fall if we are following seasonal changes.
Right.
Or is winter coming?
Ooh.
Adam thinks winter's coming. If winter's coming and we're going to get some winter storms popping up, like if the seasons start changing rapidly, that would be really bad for them.
Especially with the food situation.
They think they have a crop shortage now. It would not survive a winter. Or I had another thought. Maybe the leaves dying isn't like a seasonal change. If this really hasn't changed the whole time Victor's been there, maybe this is, a sign of the whole cycle changing over. So we think, there's been cycles in the past, possibly related to these dates that Tabitha saw. Actually, I don't know if she saw them, but the dates we saw when Tabitha was in the tower in her dream. And there were dates, going back hundreds of years. And if each of those dates represents the starting over of a cycle, the latest one being 1978, which is probably, when Victor got there, or when the massacre was, if we're about to embark on a whole new cycle, what if the leaves dying is just the beginning of this entire environment dying around them? Even, the house collapsing.
Right.
Although it happened because the town was mad at them, maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe the entire town, the entire environment's going to die and crumble around them to make room for whatever the next cycle of this land is going to be. Because, again, these houses look like they were built, in the 1900s, other than those couple of older buildings. But if we think what's going on here has been going on for hundreds of years,
right?
That leads you to think this didn't used to be a real town, that it was all somehow manufactured just to be a facade for what people are supposed to see.
Right.
In which case, every cycle, you're going to get an entirely new environment built.
I mean, it's possible that the new people that come end up building the town.
I mean, that's possible, but they're very well decorated to, in very specific time period decorated to be just built on things brought into the town. But yeah, I'm thinking like, what if, everything disappears and is rebuilt with whole new structures that are, modernized in another 40 years?
Possibly. So Kenny is trying to walk away, and Boyd starts to feel pain. Kenny seems kind of annoyed, but he comes back and says, What happened? And Boyd starts telling him everything.
Well, the worms are bothering him, so he's feeling the worms. And Boyd finally, this is the first time he's actually telling anybody about the worms other than Abby.
All right, so this is not the first time that Boyd has had an issue. And he's declined to say anything in the past.
Right.
What is motivating him
now?
now?
The last 3 days, Boyd has kept his mouth shut, right? He's only talked about the faraway trees. He kept the worms a secret. He kept Mark a secret. He kept the whole disappearing dungeon thing a secret. And all throughout the rest of this episode, he's going to be telling the real truth.
And I'm kind of curious, why now?
Well, he does mention at one point that the worms are getting worse.
Okay.
So I think maybe it's gotten to him where he can't ignore it anymore. And he's just finally realized whatever's happening is happening, and I need to let people know.
Gotcha.
Here's what I got. As soon as Kenny wanted to leave, that's when the worms acted up. So I'm thinking they, or whatever force is behind them, didn't want Kenny to leave.
They wanted Kenny around.
They wanted Kenny to stay and go to the clinic with Boyd. Like, it felt very like, oh, you're going to leave? I'm going to give you a reason not to leave.
Well, the writers definitely wanted Kenny
right.
to go with Boyd, but... So, yeah, the worms themselves have agency here and are trying to prevent
Well, the
Kenny
worms
from leaving.
or whatever powers activating the worms or, you know what I mean, like some force here.
So he's starting to blabber everything, and of course he's sounding like a crazy person.
Right.
This is the start of Kenny really worrying about Boyd's mental health. The ballerina comes out of this.
The music box comes again.
The music box.
The ballerina dances out of those cellar doors, and for me that was, out of all the times we saw her in this episode, that was the creepiest of them. Is her just dancing out of the cellar. And I took notice that at least at this point we've only seen her in these really old structures. First in the church, now in the root cellar. I mean, we will see her later in the clinic, which is a newer structure, but I was wondering, like, is that significant somehow that we're seeing her in these older places?
And also, Kenny doesn't see any of this.
Right, he doesn't see or hear anything. So we got confirmation it's all in Boyd's head, which there's actually something notable there. Because remember when Boyd first, climbed out of the well or whatever he was in and saw Martin, Boyd saw the music box. Before being infected with the worms,
yes,
Boyd saw the music box. So the music box is not just an effect of the worms. He was seeing that before that happened.
Yeah.
But nobody else sees it. So whatever happened to Boyd happened before the bloodworms.
Yep.
And
he was already hallucinating in some fashion.
Right. Like, specifically like with the music box. So the music box and the ballerina, I don't think necessarily is related to the worms.
Something else is going on?
I think it's something he's seeing anyways. I mean, I don't know, because Martin told us that, the music box, when the music stops on the music box, that's when they are coming and that's when the worms came. So there's some correlation, but it's not just like, oh, once you have the worms, then you see the music box and the ballerina.
Right. Because he definitely did see that
before. He
saw
it before. And now, Kenny's not seeing it. So it's a personalized vision.
The ballerina disappears, the music stops, and Boyd says after a while that they should go.
Yeah, he tells Kenny, go ahead and go home. Like, I'm good. But Kenny follows him now. Like you said, he's worried about Boyd now.
Right.
So he goes with him to the clinic after all.
Colony House, they are preparing to lock up for the night. Fatima is still acting weird, but not saying why.
Yeah, she's giving Ellis a total cold shoulder here. Like she's starting a fight.
Right. Back at the clinic, Boyd starts telling Christy about Martin. He says there's nothing he can say to make it sound logical. And he starts to ask Christy that if things get bad, that she will end things. And Christy is pretty dense here. I know what Boyd is asking her to do.
Yeah.
But she's just clueless as to what he's asking, which is basically, hey, kill me if this gets bad.
But also, like, all of this was thrown at her really quickly. And this story is very crazy. And remember, the last 2-3 days, he's been telling a very different story. He's been insisting nothing's wrong. He's been insisting nothing happened in the woods other than going through a faraway tree. And the fact that his story changed so drastically, I think, is part of the reason it sounds so crazy.
Right.
I think they would have believed him a lot quicker if he had just told them when he first came back the whole story. Instead of now changing his story. It makes it sound worse when you're changing your story.
I gotcha. Yeah, I was taking this episode as evidence as to why you shouldn't, or why they wouldn't tell the true story. Because you sound like a crazy
He does
person.
sound crazy. He knows he sounds crazy.
It doesn't help that he's been acting erratically all season long.
Yeah,
basically.
But yeah, I think the fact that he's changing his story makes it worse than if he had told this story from the beginning.
So Kenny and Christy end up talking.
Yeah, and we find out that it's too late now. Kenny's staying the night.
He asks, he's like, I hope it's okay that we stay here. And I'm like, no, Kenny, you need to go outside and get eaten by monsters. What the heck kind of question is that, Kenny?
I don't think this is a sleepover that Kenny's been hoping for, though.
Right. No, but it was a silly question from him. They talk about Boyd, and Kenny is reminded of his father. And once again, this is a demonstration that while he is angry with Boyd, he still very much cares about him.
Kenny thinks that Boyd is showing signs of dementia. He says, this is exactly what it was like with my dad at the beginning. And Christy confirms, dementia can happen with Parkinson's, But she tells him it's too early for that. And this isn't the first time we've heard something like that.
Right.
Like they're talking about hallucinations and things going on in your mind. And she had told Boyd before, like, yeah, those are things, but you're not there yet. You're far away from those. So I don't know. Are we getting some hinting that his Parkinson is far more advanced?
I'm not sure. I think,
or the things happening with him just happen to kind of align with Parkinson's symptoms.
I mean, it's possible that his condition was accelerated. It also is possible that the worms are the cause for most of this.
Right.
Or whatever force was acting on him is the reason for
Or the spider bites.
Right.
Let's not forget about those.
Right, of course. I would not forget
about
that.
Which only happened, a couple hours before the worms.
So, yeah, and Kenny ends up saying, okay, it does happen eventually, though, kind of quietly, thinking that it's probably happening.
Yeah.
We cut to Mrs. Wu's house. Jim realizes that there's not enough food for even a month.
Yeah, so they're all standing around. They're canning the vegetables. So we've got the entire Matthews family, Mrs. Lou, and Donna. And it kind of felt weird to me. Like, how did we get here that Donna's going to this group of people to do the food?
Well, it might be something that they do regularly that they haven't seen, but I think there's a writery reason why Donna is here.
Well, I know you have a reason that you said why Donna left where she was, but
right.
Why is she with this? Why is the Matthews family involved in this?
I don't know. Maybe,
was my question.
Well, Mrs. Lou runs the diner, so...
Right, so just because they happen to be here, but really Mrs. Lou is who she's going to work with?
So Jim thinks the people should have been told about the food shortage. And so I've gained quite a bit of respect for Jim throughout this season. But Donna's absolutely correct here. What good would it tell the people, hey, we're having a food shortage?
I mean, they do need to tell people that rations are going to get tight.
But they should downplay that for sure. They don't want people to panic.
Yeah.
And Jim's all like, oh, you should have told us. And Donna's like, well, when was that going to happen? When you were buried under the house?
Right.
And I agree with Donna and not with Jim here. And then Ethan ends up piping up to say, oh, well, actually, first Jim says, oh, you know what? This is part of it. This is part of the experiment.
Remember, he's all on this theory. He's all in on the theory. This is a government experiment, and they're testing us, and they're watching us. And he's like, well, this is exactly what they would do. They would increase our stress levels to see how we react. And you can tell, like, people are kind of overhearing his theories.
Right.
His wife's like, stop.
But she kind of treats him like he's crazy, but I don't think that Jim necessarily deserves that.
No, but from their perspective, they think he's losing it. And he's maybe getting a little obsessive over it. But, I mean, hello, Tabitha, you're the one that was so obsessed over the power last season that you literally made your house fall down.
Right. Maybe she's worried that a similar thing is going to happen again if they follow Jim down the rabbit hole like they did Tabitha last season.
And also, Donna's right here. Remember, last time Donna and Jim interacted, she basically told him, shut up. Don't talk about this because, you're right. Something is listening to us, but it's not good. And we don't want them to know that we're on to them.
Right.
So the fact that he's having this conversation right there in front of her, too, just shows how little, like, he comprehended what she was saying.
Right. Ethan ends up piping up to ask, what do you mean we're short on food? And then Jim remembers himself that he's, in the kitchen with his kids and that he's, it's your job kind of as a parent to make your kids feel safe. It's really hard to do that in this environment, but you should kind of shield them from the full thing.
And I think that reminds him right there, like, oh, this is why we're not telling everybody.
Right. Okay, so Jim ends up reassuring his son. And then we cut to the clinic.
Yep.
Boyd is by himself. And he starts hearing the music.
Music box for the third time this episode.
Right. And we see the ballerina, and she's now suddenly very aggressive.
Well, we see a shadow of the ballerina behind a curtain, and he cautiously goes up, pulls the curtain aside. She's not there, and then the real her sneaks up behind him, grabs him around the neck, and throws him down on the bed. And I was thinking about the symbolism here, like the fact that he was like distracted by this silhouette of her so she could sneak up on him. Concepts like, looking in the wrong place for a threat, being distracted by a false threat, like the monsters. Maybe they're the false threat. We were told there's something worse than them. So are the monsters just there to distract the people so the real danger can sneak up on them?
Maybe. So she gets him on the bed, starts choking him or
she's
something.
like trying to suffocate him. She's got her hands all up over his mouth and his nose, and she's being super aggressive. Looks like she might actually kill him. And just like that, she disappears.
And then Boyd hears Mary's voice asking if he's okay. He decides, because he's freaked out, to pull a gun on her.
Yeah.
Hey, look, Boyd, I know a lot of people don't like this character, but maybe don't point a gun on her. I don't know that she deserves that.
I mean, my take was, Boyd, I don't mind if you shoot her. It's fine.
I knew that was going to be your take.
And I put that on Twitter, and a lot of people agreed with me.
If he had shot her right then and there, I would have laughed hysterically. But yeah. Anyway, so he basically reassures Mary that he's okay, though I'm sure that's in no way a reassurance, given the fact that he was just holding a gun on her.
Yeah, but neither of them are okay.
Right.
Nobody's really okay now.
No. So back at Colony House, Ellis confronts Fatima.
Yeah, they go up to their room, and he wants to talk about, how she's been acting. We find out that she's upset that he knew about Sarah and didn't tell her.
Yeah, I don't think that's actually the reason she's upset.
But I mean, she is
Ellis
upset.
doesn't.
She's upset about that too.
Right.
So she tells him, like, you didn't tell me about this. You're supposed to tell me everything. We're supposed to be getting married. And I think part of it is she's questioning his loyalty to their relationship, right? Because she needs to know that he is really in this.
Right. And right here is when I'm thinking, she's pregnant.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's I was mildly thinking that early on when she was acting weird, because the idea of what if somebody gets pregnant here has been brought up by the fans, and I thought that was eventually going to be something.
Right.
So when she started acting weird, I was like, is this maybe where we're going with this?
Yeah.
And
so she tells him she's sort of that he knows there's something else.
Right.
He's like, there's something else you're not telling me. And I think she was about to tell him what she thinks is going on, but they're interrupted.
Right.
By the sound of a fight happening downstairs.
They go to investigate, and Dale is accusing Elgin, of all people, of stealing food.
Yeah.
Basically sneaking from the supplies.
From the pantry. Now, also notable, they're chopping vegetables too. So the same thing that's happening at the Lou house is happening here at Colony House. There's a bunch of people around the table chopping vegetables. So Donna didn't take all the food.
Right.
And that's what Dale has, a knife. He's chopping these vegetables.
So Elgin ends up denying that he had any involvement.
Elgin says he was putting extra food that he had in his bag into the pantry. And Ellis tries to break up the fight. Dale starts going off, and Dale got really crazy. And he basically said, the bus people, they shouldn't be here. Let's throw them all outside.
Right.
He wants to open the door and throw the bus people outside.
Right.
Which is like a weird thing.
It's pretty typical for Dale, though, to be an asshole. Bacta is trying to play peacemaker. Bacta, who's still wearing her bus outfit, which many people have commented on. I don't have a problem with that so much as she's still wearing her name tag.
Exactly. That was my point. Okay, the people that came on the bus had luggage, except for her. She's the driver. Right. She was going to go home that night. So she doesn't have luggage. So maybe she just hasn't found any extra clothes yet. So that's fine that she's still wearing that outfit. But wouldn't you have taken the frickin' name tag off? Because the name tag sitting on your chest is not comfortable. Right. When you're running around doing all this crazy stuff, sleeping on it. Yeah. I mean, you wear a name tag at work, right? Yes. Don't you take that thing off the second you're done?
Yes, pretty much. It is pretty much among the first things that I do.
So 4 days later, she still has the name tag on her chest is silly. Right. I understand the clothes.
Right. The clothes
maybe she hasn't found something else to wear yet.
I mean, to be fair, everybody basically wears the same clothes all the time.
Yeah, most of them do.
Except for Kenny, who's looking mighty fly these days.
Oh, yes. And I have this at the end, but I'll mention it now because you brought up Kenny's clothes. Ricky who plays Kenny, posted on Twitter that the shirt Kenny is wearing in these last 2 episodes is actually his father's shirt.
Okay.
So I don't know when
Kenny's father or the actor's father?
Kenny's father.
Okay.
So Mr. Lou was wearing that shirt in a previous scene. I didn't go back and look. I'm guessing it's the scene where he first checked into the clinic in that flashback. Okay. So yeah, he pointed out that Kenny's wearing his dad's shirt.
Aw.
As
presumably not the one that he died in.
Presumably not the one that he died in. No, it doesn't look like it.
Blood is really hard.
But also, he was sleeping, so maybe he wasn't. He was dressed for bed when that happened. So
okay.
His shirt would have been.
So Ellis tries to get involved, and Dale ends up stabbing Ellis.
Yeah.
Now, I've watched the scene quite a few times. It really looks to me like Dale intentionally stabbed Ellis. It's supposed to be played off kind of as an accident, but that's not how it looks.
Yeah. I think it was an accident as in his goal wasn't to hurt Ellis, but he was moving with intent. Like,
Right.
he wasn't thinking about what he was doing is
Right.
what it was. Not that it literally was an accident.
Right. So he ends up stabbing Ellis, and Ellis is like, "Oh, man, you stabbed me." And then Dale is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it."
His whole demeanor changed. It was so fun. He goes, "Oh, fuck. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to. I'm sorry."
Chris Saunders...
Like, that just makes it all better.
Yeah, his line delivery here is
His
hilariously
name's not
bad.
Chris.
What?
His name's not Chris. What's his name?
Dale. Chris Saunders is not it?
No. Give me a second. I'm trying to pull it up in my memory banks. Cliff.
Oh yeah, okay.
Cliff Saunders.
Okay.
It took me a minute. It was in my head somewhere.
So his line delivery there is pretty hilarious. It's like he, spilled his milk or accidentally bumped him in the hallway.
It's like he was all worked up, in this rage, and now suddenly he was pulled back to reality. Like, wait, I didn't do that, did I?
Yep, you did. Okay, so a lot of people...
Clara and Bacta help Fatima tend to Ellis. They get him to the couch, and...
Yeah, we see Clara. You thought she was going to play a bigger
I
role.
thought Clara was going to have something important to do based on her name. Because
Right.
I said this before, the only way I was able to remember the name Clara is because of the Nutcracker.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, this is the episode we're talking about ballet, which I was right about that.
Yes.
But yeah, Clara had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, no, she was just in the background reacting to Ellis being stabbed.
She was being helpful.
Mhm.
And, I like Clara, and I'm scared she's going to go, because usually our side characters that have a few lines are the ones that end up going.
So, a moment about Dale here. A lot of people are saying he should go to the box. One, I don't think that should be a punishment anymore.
Period.
But since Ellis doesn't actually die, it's not like it's actually murder. It'd be more like attempted murder, which would be a lesser crime. So, but he definitely can't just be palling around Colony House from here on out.
Yeah, I saw a lot of speculation. Maybe Madonna would send him to the bus with Randall. That's the new punishment, is you could live on the bus. I don't think that would go very well, though.
No, he definitely deserves like some kind of banishment, or at least being in Boyd's jail cell.
Yeah, lock
or
him up for a few days in the cell.
So if he's still there, just hanging around, I'm like that's not believable.
Yeah, but Dale's always been the troublemaker of the house, and I think he feels entitled because he's been around a really long time. He's been around longer than Boyd. And I wonder if maybe he feels slighted in his place in this community and thinks he should be more in charge. There's obvious reasons why he can't be in charge, because he is definitely not a leader.
No, he definitely is not. He's a troublemaker. And, oh, by the way, Ellis takes out that knife right away. That is a medical first aid no-no.
Right. Ellis missed that. Apparently, he doesn't watch television.
No. I mean, I'm not a doctor or an EMT or anything, and I know that.
Yeah,
so
because we watch a lot of television.
Yeah, I guess that's true. He's on the couch bleeding.
They're shoving
a
throw pillows in it, and they're just like turning red. Like, he is losing blood so quickly.
Right. We then cut to the downstairs of the clinic. Boyd is staring at the blood stain of Kenny's father. And then we hear Father Kotry say, "Some things you can't wash clean. Tell me about it. Blood, as I said, is really hard to get out." Boyd says that's how they're all going to end up. And Kotry says that's true whether they get out of here or not. But Boyd is not talking about death. He's talking about his insides being
right.
munched.
He says, no, I mean, like, laying on the floor with your insides outside of you. He's talking about being killed by monsters. And he specifically cites what happened to Mr. Liu and what happened to you, Kotry.
Right.
But, I mean, I pointed out, that's not exactly what happened to Kotry. He did not die with his insides out.
Right.
He got his throat slashed by a monster, but then they pulled him inside and he just kind of died. So he didn't actually go through getting eaten.
That's true. Boyd realizes that the things inside him are getting worse. But Kotry says that he's proud of him for asking for help and admitting weakness. The old Boyd wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
He tells Boyd that everyone probably thinks he's crazy, and Boyd asks the question, am I?
Am I, right? Like, I'm talking to you,
Right.
so...
And Khatri himself says, well, you're down here talking to your imagination, so yeah, probably. And it's funny because we speculated what exactly is Khatri here. Khatri himself thinks he's, a hallucination, imagination.
Well, I don't know, because by the end of this episode, I was kind of wondering if there's more realness to Khatri.
So you think, well, then why would he call himself his imagination?
I don't actually remember that line.
No?
No.
Okay.
But I'll talk about that more later
Okay.
when I have an interesting theory somebody had to share.
Okay. Boyd says to him something he said really early in season 1, that he's the worst priest he ever met.
Yeah, and he said that a few times.
Yeah.
Also in that conversation, Khatri had said, I'm proud of you because you wouldn't have asked for help before. And Boyd says, well, things change. So like we were talking about earlier, he realized like it's time for a change. I can't just do what I normally do. I need help. We need to work together. And he's realizing that now, that he can't be the strong one that just takes care of everything. He needs help here. It's beyond him what's going on.
And based on Kenny's behavior in this episode, I think he's the one. Finally.
Yeah, so Kenny comes in.
He demands to know who Boyd
because
is talking
he just
to.
talked to Mary and found out about, Boyd pulling the gun. So he comes to check on Boyd, and he demands, he was like, who are you talking to? Don't tell me you're talking to yourself. I can tell what is going on right now.
Right. He says he just talked to Mary, and he's not going to let him leave until he knows it's safe. And Boyd ends up saying, hey, it's Khatri. By the way, that's not helping your case.
Yeah, but he's being honest. He admits it right away. I'm talking to Father Khatri, and I know that's crazy, but that's what's happening.
He says he knows how things look. He knows, but he also knows that it's real, and that he is terrified.
He's terrified.
Now, here's the thing that Boyd misses here. If he were actually crazy, if he were experiencing dementia-like symptoms, that would feel real. He wouldn't know. Right.
The fact that you think you're crazy means you're not crazy. In general. Again, this comes from watching a lot of television, so I don't know how real that is.
Well, yeah. But it would feel real regardless. So, Boyd cannot know for sure that it is real.
But also, he says, this is real. Right. I don't know. There's a lot going on here, and I think a lot of our characters feel like they're losing their sanity.
Right.
And I think that's part of the reason that we've had such a communication breakdown, is everybody says, I think this is real, but is it real? Are they going to believe me when I tell them what's happening?
Well, Khatri says, and something that I did not mention in his comments, that the most rational response to these events is to maybe lose it a little bit.
Yeah. And it's like they're all going through this on some level.
And I should also point out that Kenny keeping him in that basement and not letting him just go right up the stairs and go past him, that's also significant growth for Kenny.
Absolutely.
And him demonstrating leadership. He's ultimately wrong in this episode, but he's wrong for the right reasons.
Yeah.
He's right. He's right in every action that he takes based on the information that he has.
And he'll end up apologizing for not believing Boyd, but like you said, he's acting reasonably based on what it appears to be to him.
Right.
And I also wanted to note the clock in this room is still at 7 o'clock. So a few episodes ago, when we had these same two characters in this room, actually that's notable. They're in the same exact spot right now that they were when Kenny threw his badge down and resigned. And they had their big split. And now they're starting to come together again, and they're in that same spot. And the last time we saw this clock, I noted that it was at 7, and I was questioning if the clocks moved. This clock is still at 7, so this clock does not move, the one in the basement of the clinic.
Interesting. All right, so back at Colony House, Fatima wants to take Ellis to the clinic. Ellis doesn't want to go because he thinks it's too dangerous for everybody else. Now, I had a theory that I posted on Facebook that if Donna had been here, there is no way that Donna would have let Fatima and Ellis go to the clinic.
Right.
That she would let Ellis just die here. Because, risking everybody's life for the sake of one man is not really worth it. Now, a lot of people agree with me. There were a couple that had some counterpoints. One thought that if Donna was there, the stabbing never would have taken place.
Right, which is possible.
And there was one guy that was talking
to... At the very least, it wouldn't have been Ellis that got stabbed. Because the only reason he got stabbed is because he was trying to break it up.
Right. Another person pointed out the fact that Donna let Kenny and Matthews into the house
Right.
when we first in the pilot. And your counterpoint was also the episode 2, where she was prepared to let Kenny die
Right.
to avoid letting Randall get out of
Right.
that.
So your point is she's not going to let the door get open no matter what. And we did see that at the diner.
Mm-hmm.
She said, when Randall had Kenny at gunpoint, okay, if you're going to shoot him, but then I'm going to shoot you because I'm not going to let you open the door.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she was willing to sacrifice Kenny, if that's what it took, to keep Randall from opening the door.
Mm-hmm.
That was her big thing. You cannot open the door because we're all at risk then.
Right.
But like the other person pointed out, at Colony House, clearly they weren't supposed to open the door. Every other person was like, no, we can't open the door. And she's the one who came down and was like, open the frickin' door and let them in.
Mm.
And the point I made, I think it's because of Ellis, specifically. Because Ellis was one of the people at the door that night.
Okay.
If he hadn't been there, if it had just been these strangers and perhaps Kenny there, I don't know if she would have opened the door.
Mm.
I think it's specifically because of her will to protect Ellis.
Okay.
And that's why I think perhaps she would have supported taking Ellis to the clinic, because it's Ellis that got stabbed.
So because of the special bond that they had
Right.
together?
Now, if Dale had been stabbed, she'd have let him die.
I would also have let him die.
If it had been a random extra, I feel like you're right. She probably would have said, we cannot open the door. Do what she can here, but nobody's leaving.
Mm.
But I think maybe because it's Ellis, she would have supported the decision to try, do whatever they can to save him. Because Donna and Boyd have this crazy love-hate relationship. They're very close.
Yeah.
And when Ellis came to live with her, she told Boyd, I'm going to protect him for you.
Mm.
And I think she takes that responsibility very seriously. I think she feels more responsible for Ellis, and by extension, Fatima, than anybody else.
Makes sense.
And again, they're the ones who she has the most respect in. She feels they're the most important people in the house. They're the, next in command after her. I think she would go out of her normal protect greater good
stance.
Yeah, to save Ellis.
Makes sense. So Elgin ends up helping Ellis to his feet with Fatima, but a gunman sees a monster going up the hill. Elgin tells him to meet him at the stairs and runs out of the house to the van.
Yeah, so he made this decision before anybody could respond that he's going to go get the van and pull it up, because Ellis said he couldn't make it to the van. That was the problem. The van was so parked away. My thought is, why the frick was the van parked so far away? Should it not be parked right next to the house?
It should be.
After episode 7, and we know their contingency plan, if something happens, is load everybody in the van and get the heck to town. We saw that happen literally just a few days ago for them.
Right.
Why is it not parked right next to the door to begin with?
I don't know. A monster asks, hey, where are you going?
Yeah.
And he struggles to get the keys in.
Yeah. At first it looked like, oh, I don't have the keys.
This was
bad. But then he finds the keys under the what's it called? The mirror thing.
Yeah, the folding mirror.
The visor.
Thing. The visor, yeah.
And then I questioned also, why don't they just keep the keys in the ignition?
Well, in some cases that kills the battery.
Does it?
Yeah.
Just having it sitting there? Okay.
Yep. So he drives it up to the porch. The monsters are approaching. Fatima gets Ellis to the car, and Elgin starts to drive.
Now,
this whole thing feels like it's happening in real time, by the way. This entire drive.
I just have one comment. When he pulls up and honks, it totally reminded me of a moment in Lost.
Oh, really?
And I almost wonder if it was a direct nod. So they have a VW bus van thing in Lost that they find, and Hurley drives it up. It's this blue bus, and he drives it up, and he does that same little 3 beep thing, and it's this iconic moment in Lost, and this just reminded me of that so much.
So Elgin is having a really hard time through this, keeping his eyes on the road.
Yeah,
I'm
of course.
He's gonna crash into something, dude.
Okay, so this scene, it was amazing.
Oh yeah, it absolutely
This was, in my opinion, the best scene of this episode. One of the best shot scenes of the whole series. It was really beautiful. And so what happened is we got a single shot. There was not a single cut in the film from the time that that they put Ellis into the car until we got out of the car at the clinic.
Mm.
There was no cuts
Right.
at all. There was no editing.
Mm.
The whole thing was one continuous shot, and the camera's panning around. We see the three of them, Ellis, we see Fatima, we see Elgin's driving. We're struggling for his life here. We see his reflections in the mirror, the windows. We're looking out the windows for the monsters. We're seeing the tree branches slap against the van. It's a super creepy scene.
And I kept expecting Elgin to like run into a monster or drive off a cliff or
right,
something.
You're waiting for something really bad to happen. Like you said, it's real time. We're really seeing this is how long it takes to get from Colony House to the clinic. It was super creepy, and it was beautiful. And the fact that it was a continuous shot was just amazing. Amazing.
Absolutely. Very well done. So they end up getting to the clinic, and then we cut to Christy in the clinic, who's approached by Mary, saying, hey, if you want, I can go to Colony House. She doesn't mean right now.
I don't think she meant right now. But before we continue, I was losing my place in my notes, but I have more to say about what's going on with this van, because this is where I told you I had somebody's theory. This is where it comes into play.
Okay.
I just got to find my spot here. First thing I wanted to mention is that Harold Perrineau, that's Boyd, told us on Twitter that the cameraman responsible for that gorgeous cinematography there was Grizz Sauls. And he's the one who did this scene. And I just wanted to congratulate him on doing such an amazing job.
He should get some more work for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know his history, but obviously he's a cameraman, and he did a beautiful job here. And yeah. Maybe he wants to come on and tell us about filming that scene.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to hear from him.
Okay, so just breaking down what happened in that scene. It was a beautiful shot. On rewatch, though, I really got the impression that the camera lens is looking like it's a first-person view. It felt like we're a person looking around the van ourselves and bouncing between these characters and just kind of turning our head back and forth looking at everything that's happening. It definitely
felt like that.
And there's a person on Facebook, Stefan Gebers.
Okay.
I asked him permission to share his theory, and he agreed that it looked like a first-person perspective, and he had a thought of who it is in the van.
Okay.
He thinks that it was Abby's spirit that we're seeing this scene perspective from. That, Abby would be there with Ellis during this scary moment for him while he's, lingering, holding on for his life. And this is her perspective kind of looking around and watching the scene. And I really like that idea.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That spoke to me, because if you stop back and think about it, Boyd has mentioned several times, he thinks Abby's here. You're seeing everything. You're hearing everything. He's fully convinced that Abby is the one that, made that song play on the jukebox and gave him that sign, if I had a boat, to play. And also that she's the one who was talking to Sarah later on and told her, that she made a mistake. That was Abby's voice Sarah was hearing. That Abby is trying to communicate. And, I was thinking about it, like, well, maybe, for all the spirits that died, a lot of people have died here.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of people. If their spirits are all hanging around town, maybe their EMFs is what's literally powering the town.
Okay.
Like, we've put all of this emphasis on where is the power coming from. Well, maybe all of the death and all of these spirits is what's powering the town.
Okay, that's an interesting theory.
So, I mean, that's a real life, theory, is that ghosts give off electromagnetic fields.
Right.
Frequencies. I forget what the F stands for. But, if you measure the amount of electricity in the room or in a spot, like, that's how they help, look for ghosts or whatever.
Okay.
So in this fictional place where, the rules can kind of bend, if we take that same principle, all of this energy released by these spirits, maybe that's what's powering all of these things. Maybe every song that's playing on the jukebox is them trying to communicate. Maybe every time the lights flicker, it's the spirits trying to communicate, because they're the ones running the power.
So is that why you think that Katri might actually be a spirit?
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. Well, if all the spirits are here, maybe Boyd is feeling a connection to him because they were so close. Maybe he really is communicating with him.
Okay.
If they are all literally here watching everything at all the time.
Okay.
Maybe even the ballerina is somebody who died here. Who knows? And, maybe the boy in white is literally a ghost of somebody who died here.
Yeah, I actually think the boy in white, is actually somebody who died in this town at some point.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I really liked that theory that Stefan had posted about, well, maybe it looks like it's another person in the van. Maybe it's Abby because it's not somebody they can see.
Right.
But it felt like we're seeing from the eyes of another party.
The other thing about that scene is that it's you don't see the road at all. All you see is darkness.
Yeah, it is.
So I was even wondering at some points, is he even driving on a road or is he driving through the woods?
Yeah, it was super dark and creepy and weird. And yeah, like what is on that path? And where are the monsters? Because they don't have a talisman.
Right.
If something comes up on them, it can smash right into those windows.
So in the clinic, I've already talked about that.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Mary and Christy, they still want to have their fight, and they're interrupted by the knock on the door, which is, this trio that has just come from Colony House.
Yeah, Fatima, Ellis, and Elgin. Christy quickly tends to Ellis. She wants to keep Mary out of it.
Yeah, everybody's helping, and Mary wants to help, of course. She's the one that's actually nurse, so
right.
Yeah, let her help.
She's just concerned, from my perspective, that her drug use makes her a liability.
Yeah.
But at this point, you need every advantage you can get.
Right. Like, the fight can wait till later.
Right.
We have a situation to deal with.
Kenny stays to assist, but Elgin, Fatima, and Boyd are basically taken out of the room.
So, Elgin leaves. We learn later he can't handle the blood. And, Boyd and Fatima go there because, obviously, they're the ones most, connected to this. This is the whole, like, you shouldn't see this.
Right.
If something happens right now, you don't want to see it. And one thing I noted is Mary was really on top of it, being Christy's assistant. So Christy's like, I need a scalp. And Mary hands her a scalpel. Like, Mary was on top of it. She's really showing Christy, I'm here. I got you. And I think Christy was taken aback because she wasn't ready for that level of help. I didn't notice that on the first viewing. I noticed that the second time around that, like, oh yeah, Mary's actually doing a good job of being a nurse right here.
Yeah, and we get to see Christy's medical skills, which is not something that we get a whole lot of within this series.
Other than her saying, there's nothing I can do to help Kelly.
He actually, that whole scene. Well, she did get Ethan's leg.
Right.
Out of
it was the first time we got to see her do something was help Ethan. But yeah, this is much more serious, right? So there's like she puts a syringe in his lung to find out if it's full of air like it should be or blood, and we find out his lungs are full of blood. He's bleeding internally, and that's what she needs a scalpel for. She cuts into him so they can drain the blood out of his lungs, which is just all super creepy and weird and gross. And I agree with Elgin. I don't like the blood.
Yeah, I would not do very well here either.
No.
I would be in the other room.
And like blood splatters up, hits Ellis in the face. Everybody's just covered in his blood. It's a good thing he's not the one that had the worms right now.
Right,
because that blood is everywhere.
So she eventually ends up stabilizing Elgin. He's lost a lot of blood. In the other room, Boyd is trying to calm down Fatima.
Yeah.
And Christy ends up coming in saying, we stabilized him. We got this under control, but he lost a lot of blood. If we don't get him a blood transfusion, his organs are going to die, and he's going to die.
Right.
So she ends up asking Boyd about his blood type. It's O negative. Boyd has the same blood type. So do I. So I could have helped in the situation.
Oh, that's good. That's a good thing. I don't know my blood type.
Yeah. O negative is actually a universal donor,
right.
So you can give to anybody.
Universal donor, but you're also like, you can only receive O negative blood.
Right. So if something happens to me, I'm pretty
you're
screwed.
A good person to keep around because you can give blood to anybody, but you're in trouble if you need blood.
Well, I hope I'm good for more than just being a blood donor.
But yeah, I don't know my blood type. That's something I should know, and I don't.
All right, so Christy gets Boyd ready to get blood.
And Christy's like, that's great, because you know that you're the right blood type. You can give it to him. And of course, he's resistant of this.
Right.
Because of the worms.
He starts talking about the worms. Nobody believes him. They all think he's going crazy.
Right, so nobody believed him at all up to this point.
Right.
They kind of, I think, forgotten he was even babbling about all this.
And then he very loudly declares, hey, look, I'm not fucking crazy. All right, look, if somebody is questioning your sanity, yelling and shouting that you're not crazy, it's not going to help the situation.
Right.
But here's the thing about that, though. Nothing is going to help.
Right.
If someone is starting to question your sanity, anything that you do is going to look suspicious.
Now, also here, I understand he doesn't want to, like, give this to his son, but if he's going to die if you don't,
right.
The worms haven't killed you.
Right.
So that's better than letting him die, isn't it?
That is something that Fatima points out. Like, even if what you're saying is true, it's better than letting Ellis die.
Right. Like, we can deal with the worms later, but, like, he needs blood or he's going to die.
And Kenny, my man, steps up and picks up a gun and points it at Boyd and says...
He points it at Boyd, and he was like, calm down, let Christy do her job. Yeah, he pulled a gun on Boyd. Right.
And, like I said, he's not right here, but his actions are understandable.
Yeah.
Given what he knows, he is in the right.
Right.
And it's an example of him stepping up.
Absolutely.
To go against his mentor. Even if he's mad at his mentor, it's still his father figure. So this is a huge moment for him.
Yeah. And at this moment, the worms, again, seem to do exactly what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like something, the worms themselves or some entity here picks this perfect moment to make the worms manifest.
And Mary ends up seeing it, and she says, oh my God, I can see it, and then now everybody knows that it's true.
Everybody can see it, everybody knows it's true. And we weren't even positive before if they would be able to see them.
Right.
We got the indication that Victor saw them early on. I forget what episode that was.
That was, I believe, episode 2.
But here we have confirmation like, oh yeah, look, there's worms. He's telling the truth.
And Kenny changes his tune. Instead of holding a gun on him, he now takes out a knife and says, give the worms to me.
Yeah.
Once again, he's stepping up.
He's stepping up. And I was really confused. So I get now, after everything, that the theory is you pass the worms to someone, you no longer have them, that person has them.
Which we don't know for sure is true.
Right, but that's where they are. But I was just confused. Where did they get that idea in this moment?
Well,
like, why does
Kenny gets this moment, gets this thought because of what he said to Christy earlier about what happened between him and Martin.
Right. Well, what happened was when Martin passed the worms, he died.
Right.
So how do you not know that Boyd's just going to die when he passes the worms? Now, we know Martin died because he should have died. He was chained up and emaciated, possibly hadn't been fed in years, and the worms wouldn't let him die.
Well, also, it seems like he hit his head in that moment, too.
I always took it as he did the thing he was supposed to do, which is pass on the worm, so then he was allowed to die because he should have been dead anyways. Right. But they don't really know any of that. They didn't see it. We watched the scene. They didn't watch it.
Right. But at the same time, we don't have a lot of time to screw around.
No, but I just feel like a step was missed somewhere that that everybody in the room came to this conclusion that if you pass the worms on, you're not going to have them anymore. Now your blood's going to be fine to give to Ellis. Right. I think they're taking a risk. One that Boyd is not willing to take. He doesn't want to pass the nightmare on to Kenny. Yeah, but I would have thought, well, maybe that'll be the case, but maybe you're going to frickin' die the way Martin died. Right. If you pass it on. Or maybe everybody has the worms now. Right. Because, like, logically, you're going to look at this like it's some sort of parasite, right? And at the very least, Christy I would have expected her to step up and say, wait a minute, if you give it on, all that's going to happen is you're going to spread it. Like, that's how diseases work, right? You spread them. You don't eliminate them from the original host. Right, yeah. And I would have expected her to have some comment like that, questioning, like, what our theory is here about what's happening by passing these blood. But it seemed like that didn't happen. Everybody was on the same page with their thought process that if you give it to somebody else, your blood's going to be clean. So, yeah, within the available scene and everybody's assumptions, it's interesting that that Kenny would rather, no, I'm sorry, Boyd would rather Ellis die than pass it on to Kenny. And I don't think that's necessarily where he was at. I just think he was still looking for an answer, and he wasn't ready to say, you know, yeah, I'm going to give you the worms. He wasn't ready to go there yet. But I don't think he meant, I'd rather let my son die.
But
now,
then...
here's one thing that I'm questioning. Why the heck didn't they ask everybody else in the room, what's your blood type?
Right.
I get that it's the rarest blood type, but that doesn't mean nobody else in the room has it. They never went through that conversation at all.
Right.
And actually, when Kenny picked up the knife and said, give it to me, at first I thought he meant take my blood because I'm also O negative.
Right.
That's what I thought he was saying.
Yeah, how urgent is this situation? Is Ellis going to die, like, within the next 5 minutes, or does he have a little time here?
Right.
Because it seems like they're reacting like he's going to die real soon if he doesn't get a blood transfusion.
Right. They're
this
talking
second.
about, like, organ failure. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but yeah, would he have been okay to wait till the morning to get blood?
Mm-hmm.
'Cause maybe you could ask the other 100 residents of town what their blood type is.
Right.
If that was the case.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, can you start, like, sucking up his own blood that's literally everywhere and injecting it back into him? Is that a thing you can do?
I don't know. I've never heard of anybody doing that.
There's like a lot of blood, like, just spilling out everywhere.
But, I mean, once... I don't know. Like, is it still viable once it leaves your body like that?
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, what's a transfusion? You're taking it out of one body and putting it in another.
Yeah, I guess, but it's usually, like, through something.
Yeah, like a direct
I don't know. It's not like
line.
It's not like exposed to like direct oxygen, so I'm not sure, honestly. All right, so Boyd realizes that the blood needs to go somewhere.
The worms, specifically, the blood worms.
Right. He walks towards the door, followed by Kenny and everybody else. He asks, "Where are you going?" He looks up at Kenny like he fully expects to go out there and die. And then he goes right out the door while everybody shouts at him, trying to stop him. And Boyd ends up calling for the monsters, taunting them, ranting. Eventually, Smiley shows himself.
Yeah.
And then another, and they're circling around him.
They circled around him, and Boyd, I think he might have realized in this moment he made a mistake. Like, what's your plan here? Well, you now have, like, 5 monsters around you.
Right.
And if you get killed right now, which feels really imminent...
Ellis is dead.
You're not helping Ellis.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you can't, harvest his blood if your organs are all gone and your body is taken to God knows where.
Right.
Like, this is a huge risk that Boyd is taking.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee.
Wouldn't he have been a lot better off just giving Ellis the frickin' worms in the transfusion?
I think so.
And then dealing with the next step in the morning.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he cuts his hand and then slices Smiley's throat, who doesn't bleed.
He doesn't bleed, so the monsters do not have blood circulating through their body.
That's
which is
officially
interesting because we learned from Jasmine that they are warm,
mm-hmm.
which would lend you to think they do have blood circulating through their body.
Mm-hmm.
So that's weird.
Right.
The monsters are very weird.
Right. We're gonna learn hopefully more about them next episode. He puts a hand on Smiley's throat. The worms seemingly travel out of him into Smiley.
He goes, "My blood is your blood now, motherfucker." But he still looks confused. You can tell he really doesn't know what's happening. I don't think he knows at this point if this is gonna work.
Right.
But you get that he does this weird, like, he makes this weird noise. Like, it sounds painful, and you can see, like, oh, we're supposed to be thinking now that the worms are leaving him. And
we do have some kind of sound effect indicating that, I think.
Yeah, it was all kind of weird. But in the meantime, Smiley's just, like, totally chill, and he gives us his second memorable line of the series, and he says, "I like this game."
Mm-hmm.
So he's having a grand old time. He doesn't feel threatened by this situation at all.
And he starts to walk towards Boyd, still smiling, and then suddenly feels a lot of pain. His face transforms.
Yeah, he transforms into his monster form, so whatever makes them look human, he lost that ability.
And then he topples over and supposedly dies. The other monsters are just letting Boyd stand there, by the way.
Right.
They're circling around Smiley like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, they look back and forth at each other very quizzically. And then they walk away in all different directions just like they came.
Right, and Boyd, meanwhile, is taking this opportunity after distraction to run back into the clinic.
And in my opinion, he didn't do that fast enough.
No, I would have been out of there as soon as I possibly could.
They don't attempt to go after him. He gets back in the clinic. The whole thing's very strange. And I don't think anybody knows what just happened.
Right.
Including any of the monsters.
Right.
I took a poll to Twitter, and I asked, what's your favorite Smiley quote? You picked a bad spot, or I like this game. What's your answer?
My answer, I like this game, I think is mine.
Yeah. We got 71% said you picked a bad spot. 29% said I like this game. But I think part of that could just be because you picked a bad spot has been around longer
Mm-hmm.
and it's become more notable. I'm questioning if I should run this poll again, like after the season, and see. When he said I like this game, I literally just like started laughing out loud. I thought that was just brilliant.
So did you happen to make a poll about whether Smiley is actually dead?
I didn't make that poll, no, and I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Where my thoughts are on it.
All right. So
So Christy does the transfusion. As soon as Boyd comes in, she's like, "Great, let's do it."
Right.
They take his blood and start giving it to Ellis.
We see Mary eyeing the cabinet, wiping her hands. And then we cut to Ethan and Donna going down to the cellar of Mrs. Wu's house. Have we ever really seen... Ouch.
I'm okay.
Okay, all right. She just banged her elbow pretty hard on her funny bone, which is not funny at all. Have we ever seen these characters interact?
I mean, Ethan has spent time at Colony House, but yeah, I don't know if we've had like a one-on-one scene between the two of them like this before.
Ethan is looking up at the lights, and Donna's like, "Whoa, what do you see up there?" And he asks the question, "What if this house collapses too?" Donna doesn't think that's likely because nobody's gonna be digging around in this house.
So we get the sense she definitely blames Tabitha for what happened.
I mean, as do I. I blame the Matthews for what happened there.
And yeah, remember they're in a basement. So yeah, Ethan's like, wait a minute, last time I was in a basement, like really bad stuff happened.
Ethan confesses to being scared, and he says that he doesn't want to be on a quest anymore, that he wants to go home. Donna tells him something that her mother used to say.
And she says she's scared too.
Right.
She admits
she confesses to that. She says that fear exists along love and everything else, and that without fear, you wouldn't learn how to be brave, and you couldn't be a hero.
Right. She says fear is what makes us heroes, and he gives her a hug. We had a little heart-to-heart.
Nice little scene between the two of them.
Yeah, but also I felt like this felt really kind of weird and out of place for everything else going on around it.
Yeah, I get that.
This was our only time we went back to that group of people.
I think maybe they just needed a cut, so they cut to something else. So this is the scene they threw in.
So Harold was on Twitter and he said, he was like, "I'm sick of this fucking quest too." So I replied to that and I said, "I'm sorry, to Harold and Simon, but us fans kind of insist that you keep going."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just 20 more seasons.
Yeah.
That's all.
Just keep up the quest a while longer. You can do it.
Christy tells Boyd to take it easy. But
the transfusion's done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And Boyd says he's fine, and he's acting like Boyd again. Now, Harold Perrineau has done a really great job this season, but I kind of miss the old Boyd from season 1, the one that wasn't acting like a crazy person and shouting all the time. I kind of like the calmer Boyd. I'm glad to see him back, at least for the last parts of this episode anyway. I hope it kind of continues.
So Ellis can breathe.
Yes, that's good news.
It seems that he seems to be out of the woods, so to speak. He seems to be on the road to recovery.
Fatima...
I took another Twitter poll.
Okay.
Okay, I asked, do you think Ellis is okay?
Mm-hmm.
I gave 3 options. He's good. He's okay. He's okay, but he's got the worms too now.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's not out of the woods yet. He might die.
Well, I mean, a lot of people are concerned that they might not have enough antibiotics to take care of maybe the possible resulting infection.
Right. I don't take it as 100% he's better.
Mm.
He was still freaking stabbed. He had blood in his lungs.
Mm. I
mean, I'm not so positive that he's golden.
Right.
But here's what Twitter answered. 45% said he's good.
Mm.
55% of the people said he's got the worms. And 0 people said he's in trouble.
Okay.
To die.
Okay.
So people are pretty confident that he's going to pull out of this, but the slight majority thinks that Boyd still had some worms to pass on.
Well,
to him.
that is my impression as well. Some people were like, well, now you gave up your weapon. I'm not so sure that's the case.
I mean, see, I don't know how to feel about that because we did get that really overdramatic moment that sure made it look like the worms left him.
Well, some worms left him anyway.
Right. Right, but also, like, they didn't go to a human host,
Mm.
like they're kind of meant to do. That
Right.
we're kind of, given that insinuation.
I mean, it's also possible that that's the wrong impression, that perhaps these were designed to fight the monsters.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Fatima and Christy are talking.
Yeah, and so she's crying, and Christy is comforting her, and she ends up asking, she laments the fact that she almost lost him. Christy says, you didn't, though.
Yeah.
And then
she said, I have to ask you something, but you promise you won't tell anyone.
And she asked for a pregnancy test. Whoa. All right, so Boyd is looking out the window at Smiley, his corpse on the ground. Kenny approaches and says that they should have listened to him. Well, Kenny, I'm not sure with the available information that there shouldn't have been worms of doubt, see what I did there, about the situation. I think your approach was the right one, even if you were ultimately wrong.
Right, but he apologizes for not believing him and not trusting him.
Mm.
And I think this is bigger than just a conversation about, I didn't believe you had worms.
So you think this is a reconciliation
as
far as
like
Sarah's concerned?
They are in a much better place, and I feel like Kenny's maybe realizing this isn't a black and white situation.
Mm.
And
at the same time,
there's more going on than he was cognizant of. And, maybe I need to have a more open mind about everything that's happening in this frickin' place.
At the same time, I don't read this as complete forgiveness for not telling Kenny in the first place.
No, I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he forgives Boyd for keeping the secrets. He definitely doesn't forgive Sarah for what she did, but I feel like maybe he's coming at it from a more of a place of understanding, and he more understands the need that Boyd had to do anything he can to try and find answers.
I also think at this point that they can work together, even if their relationship is not completely healed.
You can tell that they've come a long way in this episode. Like, throughout the episode, we saw all these instances where Kenny is trying to help Boyd, trying to help Ellis, trying to step up and do the right thing that he feels in that moment, to be helpful and not to be like, oh, well, screw you, I don't care if you die.
I think at this point, this episode demonstrated to me that Kenny has finally stepped up enough that he is actually the deputy that Boyd is going to need, and the support that he's going to need.
Right.
I think it's to his disadvantage to see Boyd as a god-like figure, that can do no wrong. I think it's important for somebody to question Boyd. Right. Now, in some respects, Donna fills that role, but I think he could use other people to question him.
Yeah.
And not just take everything like he's like,
we're also,
he can do no wrong.
We're also in a place with this group of characters where I think they all kind of realize we need to communicate more. We need to talk these things out. We do all kind of have different answers and different things going on, and we need to do this together. And whatever, something has to happen, right? Because there's a lot going on, and we need to figure it out together.
Right.
And we see in the previews that we're going to get more of that next week.
Now, okay, so actually I'll finish this out before getting any further into this. But so he's looking out the window at Smiley, and Kenny asks, do you think he's dead? And Boyd asks, I don't know, but we'll find out soon.
As in the morning is coming.
Right.
What's going to happen in the morning?
And that is where the episode ends. Okay, so a lot of people speculated that Smiley is not in fact dead. In fact, I think you're one of those people. But that he's going to turn into some kind of super monster.
So, I mean, I can see there's been so many theories, and at this point, I'm kind of like, anything is possible, right? I think any of these theories that people have thrown out there could be equally as plausible as anything else, because there's no rules right now. Literally anything can happen. And the fact that the monsters themselves were surprised tells me even they don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
But yeah, is he dead? I mean, he looks dead.
Right.
We know in the preview
suggests that
his body's still there in the morning. He's still passed out, and they approach him in the daylight, and they're going to bring him inside. And I think the description says something about we're going to experiment on him, or not experiment, but
perform an autopsy.
Right. We're gonna figure this guy out.
I am so excited for that.
I'm so excited for that.
What kind of physiology this creature has.
Right. So, but here's just some of the theories, that have been thrown on what could happen. Maybe he's dead. That's that. And they're going to use this to learn how to fight the monsters.
Mm.
Maybe he's not dead.
Right.
Maybe he's just like asleep or in stasis and he's going to wake back up.
Or
maybe once you have him inside that building, which would be bad.
Yes.
And I look at that theory like maybe because remember he was like, I like this game.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that whole thing was an act and he's playing some long con, trying to gain access to them in the building.
Right. Okay.
Maybe like he'll be a daywalker.
Yeah.
So during the day, we know the monsters hibernate underground. They're in their monster form, and at night they come out in their person form.
Mm.
Well, if he was forced into his monster form during the night, maybe at some point during the day, he'll now get his person form. Right. And be allowed to walk during the day. Because we still don't know why the monsters don't or can't.
Right.
So maybe he'll gain that ability. I didn't write all this stuff down, so I'm just kind of pulling all this from my memory. Maybe what other ones were out there?
Well, I heard one that he might turn human.
He might turn human, which I don't think that's the case, but I think that'd be really fun. Like, I'd like that. If suddenly we got human Smiley, who could maybe give us some freaking answers.
Right, maybe.
Maybe he's dead, but maybe an identical looking monster is going to respawn out there. Mm-hmm. We could still have a Smiley monster.
Right. So
he was taken out of the game, but they're just going to respawn another one.
Yeah, it's quite, hopefully a lot of people are sad about the possible death of Smiley. So
my take on it is I don't know what to believe, as far as is he dead, is he alive, something else is going to happen with him. I don't think Smiley's story is over. Mm-hmm. I think something else is going to happen with Smiley. And I think that because he's like the main character among the monsters. Mm-hmm. He's on the cover art for the season. I mean, yeah, it could just be he's a big deal because he's the one we killed. Mm. But I don't know. I feel like if it was just like, oh, we killed a monster, now we're going to go after all the monsters.
Right.
They'd have kept him around for later, for a battle later on, being like the leader of the monsters.
Because, he is the most popular one among the fandom.
So I feel like if this was just like, oh, we killed a monster, they would have picked a different monster and then saved him for something else later down the road. Right. So that's why I feel like something else is going to happen with this character or with, this actor. Whether it's a different clone of this monster or maybe even we're going to see flashbacks with this actor.
To when his human days. Presuming that they were ever human in the first place.
We still don't know if they were human. And I was wondering, maybe we're going to get confirmation of that in this episode. Because if they were human, there's a good chance this monster has a wallet on him. And when they go to examine his body, they're going to find the wallet of the human that this used to be. Like, the women still carry pocketbooks around. Yes. So, if they used to be human, I would expect to find a wallet in his pockets telling us who he was, where and when he was from.
Some people pointed out that the nurse monster was actually looking at the time.
Yes, she had a brooch watch on her uniform, and she was looking at the time. And people were saying, well, maybe... that was just out of habit or part of your fake persona pretending to be human. But I think it was more intelligent than that. I think, they are monitoring the time. They know they have to be back in the caves before sunrise. They're intelligent creatures. Yes, absolutely. We learned how intelligent they were when they were able to pin Kelly and not kill her. That wasn't like just happenstance.
No, absolutely not. In fact, it was probably the nurse monster that did it.
Maybe. So is he dead? I don't know, but I don't think his story's done. I think we're going to see more of Smiley in some fashion.
Well, we're going to see his corpse at the very least.
Yeah, we're definitely going to see him in the next episode.
Whether that actor is still playing.
Right,
or not,
it could just be,
rig a dummy.
The whole thing is,
like, just having the actors show up to, be dissected in monster form is, I don't think, totally necessary. But, yeah.
Now, also, I don't know if you saw this, there was an interview that Jamie Maguire had with a YouTuber.
I haven't seen it, but I had heard about it.
Okay, so Jamie Maguire, that's the actor who plays Smiley, did an interview, and I didn't watch the whole interview, but I saw a clip of this interview that was posted in the Facebook groups talking about, this. And he asked Jamie, what is your favorite moment in the series as a monster? Like, what was your favorite part to do? And he talked about the balcony scene and the bus scene. You know, those are Smiley's big moments. And then the person interviewing him said, well, remember, I'm going to air this after episode 6, so we're allowed to talk about episode 6. And he was like, oh, yeah, I love that scene, too. It was great. They're talking about the dynamics of filming that and all of that good stuff. And the interviewer says, well, now that Smiley's dead, and Jamie, it felt like he was being a little spoilery. And he was like, well, is he, though? He was like, and the guy's like, he sure looks like he is. And Jamie was like, well, I don't know. Anything's possible.
Right.
So it felt, I mean, he could have just been trolling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely could have been.
But it totally felt like he was being spoilery and he was trying to pull back on it. It felt like he's filmed more scenes than that. In, you know what I mean? In some fashion. So I do think Jamie Maguire is going to be back in the future episodes.
Well, I hope so. And if not, I wish the actor well.
And again, it could be, you know, not necessarily that he's still alive. It could be any number of things, any number of ways. I mean, Father Kosher's still making regular appearances. So.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, another theory I thought, maybe Boyd and Ellis both have the worms, or any of our other characters who see visions. Maybe they'll start seeing Smiley in their visions. Ooh. And then we don't even know, is he really there or not? Because it might be a vision or it might be real. So I thought maybe he'll start appearing in visions as an option of how he could still be returning.
Okay.
Because we got plenty of visions going on.
Right, yeah. Plenty of ways that the actor could still be around.
Yeah.
Even if he is actually dead.
Let's see. We talked about Kenny's shirt already. I think we covered everything in my notes.
All right. So is that it for this episode?
I think so.
Okay.
It was a great episode.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a little, you can drink that if you want. That's okay.
I'm good.
It was a little, like I said, I think they overhyped it. I think some fans are annoyed that it's not what they were expecting.
At the same time, if you're watching this episode and you're still complaining about this season, I'm not necessarily taking you seriously. It's
maybe just not the right show for you.
Right.
And that's okay.
At this point,
that's okay. It's not for everybody.
I just think that we are looking for different things in a television show than you are.
Yeah, I saw you having a conversation with somebody. They were complaining about what deep and meaningful moments.
Well, I didn't even know what D&M meant.
Yeah, I didn't know either. I was reading the comments and someone said it means deep and meaningful. I was like, oh, well.
I like deep and meaningful.
Isn't that a good thing? To have meaningful stuff happening?
Right.
And I said this last week. It's not an action series. And it's not strictly a horror series either. This isn't just a slasher.
Right. I think if we don't have all those character moments in the preceding episodes, this episode doesn't mean as much.
Yeah.
Same for in episode 7 last year. Like when all that stuff happening and the county house was invaded, none of that means anything if you don't care about the characters.
Right. And, you know, you think about horror, you have movies that last 90 minutes. We have TV shows, you know, that follow horror in a series. But usually they are one and done in a season. Like American Horror Story, you get one season and the story ends. Slasher, you get one season and the story ends. Because you can't have an ongoing straight up horror that lasts for many seasons.
Right.
That doesn't work.
No.
If you just keep killing everybody rapidly, it's over.
It's funny because...
I mean, even like Walking Dead, we stopped killing characters and focused on the people, and then, you know, fans didn't like that, but that's what we have. You can't just kill everybody and have a 6-season series. It doesn't work that way.
I was watching the first season of American Horror Story, and I was speculating that if there was a second season, that it would have to be an anthology series because way too many characters were dying.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, if it's not an anthology series, I don't see how this continues.
I remember being very sad when I found that. And actually, you're the one who gave me that news, that it was an anthology. And I was so sad because I was like, I love these characters and I want to keep going. And we did get back to those first season characters a lot. So, so that was good.
Yep.
But yeah, it doesn't work if you're just straight up horror all the time.
Right.
And that's not what this is. This is a puzzle box show.
Yes.
The goal here is to solve a mystery, regardless of all the elements surrounding that mystery.
Right. And no, we're not going to get all the answers by the end of season 2. If we get all the answers, there's no series left.
Right. I saw someone last night that was like, oh, I sure hope they find a way home by the end of this season. You do? Because if they go home, the show's over.
Right. And I want more than 2 seasons.
And if they went home in the next 4 episodes, that's going to be done really poorly.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't hope they find their way home. I hope they're stuck here for a good long time and continue their quest.
Right, and I also hope they don't get canceled before they actually finish.
Oh my goodness, no.
The story.
There's still some ambiguity about what's happening with the season 3. Some people are saying it's definitely happening. A lot of people are saying, no, we're not out of the woods. There has not been an announcement. We got the writer's strike lingering.
Right.
Now there's fires happening at the set.
Wow, it's almost like we're in this series.
So yeah, I feel like we're in good shape just because, this is an original series being done for a streamer.
Right.
It's different than, a network show. It doesn't have the same pressures for ratings and stuff like that. And I feel like this is a high-end show for MGM. This is like one of their main pulls right now.
Right.
So I don't see them ending it anytime soon. But if people keep spewing negativity, you never know.
Yeah. There seems to be a decent amount of fandom, for sure. So
and
I think the show has an audience.
Growing. Some of the Facebook groups are up over 20,000 members now, which is a lot for a Facebook group about a current new show.
Mm-hmm.
So I think overall we're in good shape, and I feel pretty confident that the next few episodes are going to be really amazing and powerful.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think we're going to be left in a terrible, terrible cliffhanger, and it's going to be torturous to wait.
And then we're going to have to watch 5 years for season 3 to come out.
Yeah, I like the okay.
Hopefully not that long.
Hopefully not that long.
All right, so we would like to hear from you. What'd you think of the podcast? What'd you think of the episode? Leave a comment. Get us on the Facebook groups where Stacie and I both are. If you have any interesting theories, we will shout you out. Or even if you don't have any interesting theories and just bad theories, whatever, we'll shout you out. Stacie can be reached at?
I can be reached on Twitter at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as ourselves. Yes, I guess I said that right. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this podcast, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.